Welcome to the show today, Tim. How are you?
Oh, fantastic.
Good, 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 good. You and I have connected multiple times over the last month or so, I believe. Thank you,
We have.
Podmatch. Yes. Yes, thank you, Podmatch. Can you tell everyone where you are from?
I was born just outside London on the north side, a
Mhm.
place called Hatfield in Hertfordshire. And Hatfield was one of the new towns. It was actually an old town, but it became a new town after the Second World War,
Mhm.
where they were moving out an awful lot of East London and North Londoners because of the lack of housing. So they were throwing out what they call prefabs, prefabricated houses at the end
Yeah.
of the Second World War.
Okay.
And lots and lots of people moved out to these new towns, and which Hatfield was one of them. And it was a pretty rough area when I was growing up as a kid. It was that rough that they used to teach the kids how to fight before they could walk, before they were allowed out. So once you did learn to walk, you went out. At least you had half a chance of fighting somebody off.
Okay, so a violent area. There was definitely like a rough area.
It certainly had its moments.
Oh, and I mean, what did you learn from growing up in that kind of environment?
Resilience, how to look after yourself,
Mhm.
um, just pretty much um, all the life skills that kind of stuck with me.
Yeah, and
Yes,
you spent, right, a large part of your adult life in the British Army.
I did. I
What
joined the
was,
army.
yeah, tell us about that.
Well, I joined the army as a young lad at 16,
Okay.
and it took me 2 attempts to get into the army, but I got in and never really looked back. And I had a career that spanned about 44 years in all. I did some regular service, came out and went into the reserves, um, then went on to the regular reserves, and then came back in on what we call full-time reserve. And I did 20 odd years on full-time reserve. 10 of those, 11 of those years was in psychological operations, where I did 7 operational tours. I did 2 tours of Kosovo. I did Macedonia, and I was in Macedonia when 9/11 happened. 5 months later, I'm flying into Kabul thinking, what have I done?
Wow.
And then I did 2 further tours of Afghanistan, and then I did 1 tour of Iraq, which which I didn't really like much.
I am sure. I am sure. I can understand. When
Mm.
you mentioned the operator on 7 operational deployments, you said psychological. Can you tell people what that is? Can you explain that a little bit
So some people will call it propaganda, lies, and deception.
more?
However, what it really boils down to, the bottom line is military marketing.
Okay.
And what it is, the definition of psychological operations is a psychological operation directed at a known target audience to effect a change in attitudes or behaviour for political and military means. That's it. It's just marketing. It's
It's
just
marketing.
hearts and minds operation. That's what it's hearts and minds. It's just getting people to a message that you want to portray, and that's what we did, and I loved it.
Wow. I'm sure you learned a lot during that time. What are a couple of the key, like you learned resilience growing up, right? Let's talk about some of the things that you might have seen, things that might have stayed with you, or key lessons that you look back and think, I wouldn't be who I am today without living that time.
Oh,
Big question.
oh, big question. How long we've got?
First thing that drops down.
We could be here for quite some time. I've seen so much. I really have. That's maybe who I am. Back in the early days in the army, my first tour of Northern Ireland. I don't know whether many people know about the Northern Ireland conflict. It went on for 30 odd years. It was called Op Banner, And the British Army, for us, it was a live training experience, sort of. I mean, it was life or death. I mean, we had some real tough times there. The first tour I did in 1977, I was only a young lad. I literally had my 19th birthday out there, and we had shootings most days. We had rocket attacks, RPG-7 rocket attacks. We had half a dozen of those while we were there. And riots, we were always called out to somebody throwing stones at us. But we trained really hard for that particular deployment. And while you were there, you don't think about it. Your training kicks in, and you're seeing all this stuff. And for young lads, it's great fun. It really is. And it was the first time I'd seen a dead body. And I saw half a dozen on that tour. And that puts a slightly different perspective on it. That enables you to grow up a little bit quicker. And ever since, I've been okay around talking about death and normalising it, because I mean, so many people treat death as a taboo subject. It's off the radar. You can't speak about it until somebody dies, and then there's all the grief that goes with it. But it shouldn't be that. It should be a celebration of that person's life. So that's one of the big lessons that I learned early on, and over the years I've seen I don't know how many, lost count. Particularly in the latter years on the operational tours. Kosovo was pretty horrendous at times. My job out there was I ended up you couldn't make this up. I was a psychological operator. My job was my predominant role was coming up with a campaign to work with the Serbian population that were in Kosovo at the time, and they were in small enclaves, and it was providing them with information for their safety and giving them safe routes to get around the place to do their business. And we worked quite a lot with the main monastery in Gračanica, which is just to the south of Pristina, which was the capital.
Okay.
And then we had because I did 2 tours back to back, when we had the RIP, the relief in place, the new brigade came out and they wanted to change things up as to how our team worked, and they put the PSC, which is a psychological support element, in with the media ops team. And they had a driver for the media ops team who used to drive a secure fit Land Rover that had a secure radio in the back, had a secret brick in it for the comms, basically. He got compassionate and got taken out of the operation. There was nobody else other than me that could drive that secure fit vehicle. So the media ops team, what they did was, if there was an incident of some sort, and I'll give you for instance, there was a mass grave find, and there was quite a few of those at the time. So the media ops officer would be deployed out with this vehicle, and I was the driver for it, because I had to go and sign out the crypto, this brick that had secret information on it. Or it did this. It did the secret communications. So we had that on board. We had a satellite phone and we had mobile phones, and we would go out to the incident, and we would be the link between the commander on the ground and the journalists. So while we were travelling to whatever incident it was, we'd be calling up the journalists, telling them to meet us at one particular place, and we would be their eyes and ears on the ground with the local commander that was dealing with the incident. And through that, I got to see a huge amount of stuff that, and the masquerades were pretty horrendous.
I think this is, and I know it's a heavy topic. I appreciate you sharing this because just in the time that I've known you, like you are somebody who is out there talking about the things that people don't necessarily want to talk about. They don't want to draw attention to it. They don't, but, and then when we do that, which is why I always relate to how you're speaking, when we do this though, we are making these topics even harder to talk about, right? We're ignoring what is happening. And one of the things you said, like talking about death is not a taboo subject. Like we have to start, it's a reality that we're all going to experience at some point or form. It's definitely going to happen. As you do that, I know I want to take that into like this. You've created this platform. I don't want to jump ahead, but I do in a sense, because like as you created what you do now, like you are having incredible conversations with people from all over the world. And this is a beautiful thing about podcasting is you get to create this. So I'm gonna segue this as best as I can. When you are saying, you know, we want to start talking about these things, we want to really start to remember these stories. We don't want to forget these stories. Is that part of who you are? And that is what led you to create the kind of podcast you have? Because you have a different, I've been on a lot of podcasts. You have a very different podcast. I love it. And I just, as I'm listening to you talk now, I feel like that connection is important.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, the reason I got into it in the first place was I was doing ancestry, and I found my great grandfather, and he lived just across the harbour from where I live now, in Portsmouth, and he was a chief stoker in the Royal Navy, and I found his military records and stuff like that. He died back in 1930, and I'd have loved to sit down and have a chat with him about his life and what it was like in the Navy at the time. Unfortunately, without a time machine, I can't do that.
Right.
His story is lost, and nobody will ever know what he did. When we went into the lockdown, I mean, I was drinking a little bit. I'll put my hand up to that. I am susceptible to a little drop of spare rum now and then, and sometimes I can drink vast quantities of it. So, with nothing to do, and I got a little bit bored with ancestry. I'm coming up against brick walls all over the place. I got to thinking, if I don't tell my story, it'll be lost forever. And I got some okay story. I mean, if any of your listeners out there are suffering from insomnia, particularly, listen to one of my podcasts. I did 24 half-an-hour episodes of my life, and it's guaranteed to put anybody asleep. Either that, or it give them nightmares.
Sorry. Oh, you're funny. Okay, keep going.
I know. And see how I carried that off. I was quite serious when I told you.
I know. You're very smooth in how that transition happened.
So that's what I did. And I got to the end of that, and I did a couple of in-depth episodes of my life. I did some other things that I was focused in on. And I got to the end and I thought, what do I do now? We're still in lockdown. I'm bored. What about telling other people's lives? So the first one I did was my mother. My mum's still alive. I mean, she's what, 82 this year. No, 83. Blimey, 83. My mother, and she's still spending my inheritance.
She is. Mom.
might have to visit her sometime with a pillow, maybe. Depends on how desperate I get for a few funds.
We're joking. Although that is a joke my dad
It
says
is,
regularly, just so, like my dad will say that regularly. We're going on a trip, we're spending your inheritance. He will say that
yeah.
as it like on a regular basis. Yeah.
So you be careful when you go to sleep. I might pop round with a pillow. See,
Okay.
this is the sort of conversation you can have around death. And
Yeah.
I have this conversation with my mother fairly regular. I mean,
Mm.
she tells me that she's going out, she apologises for spending my inheritance. And I says, all right, one day I'll catch up with you.
Oh, you take a sense of humor to something that is, like I said, it affects all of us. And something you said
Yeah.
early on is the fact that because we don't want to talk about it, we treat it as a taboo topic. And then when it happens to people that we know, we are still treating it like a taboo topic, which means I don't know what to say to them, so I'll say nothing. Like one of the common things I see a lot on from people I get to interview is when they've gone through loss, they will say, you know, I had this incredible circle of people, and then all of a sudden it was like I had a plague or something, and people were afraid to talk to me, so they just leave. Like it's just now I'm so alone and isolated. And so I think that talking about our stories and our history is really important because it's a piece of that connection. But I just love that and how you're doing it, because I think this is something that we should talk about more.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things with when there's a death, I'll pick up on that point you just made there. People treat you like a leper, or they go over top. They really don't know what to say to you when they'll send flowers, they'll send a card, and they may be all over you like a cheap rash in the first week or two. And once the
Yes.
funeral's out of the way, they think it's over.
Mm. Starting.
It's the month and years of
Mhm.
loneliness after a loss. That's when you need your friends, and that's probably when you find out who your real friends are.
Yes.
It's further down the road, and they are turning up 2, 3, 4 months, a year, 2, 3 years later, and they're still having a laugh about the person that you cared for.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm fortunate. I mean, I say fortunate. How can we say? My best mate from years ago, we were. I mean, we were close. I mean, we were so close. I mean, we we used to go away a lot together. We used to go up into the mountains. We used to hike, use it hike. We did it sort of military hiking. Didn't have
Mhm.
an awful lot of choice to do it, whether we did it or not, actually. Um, but we were really close. I mean, him and my wife, or his wife and my wife, were really close.
Yeah.
He took his own life in 2005,
Mhm.
and we still don't know to this day why he did it. But we've had the conversation, and we're quite happy to talk about him. A year later, my wife died.
Mhm.
So he died on the 10th of November, or the 11th of November in 2005. My late wife died on the 10th of November 2006. November's a pretty tough month.
Yeah.
About 4 years after my wife died, we actually got together with my best mate's wife. We've now been married for just over 12 years. We're comfortable with each other. We've known each other for best part of 40 years. So
Yeah.
we've got no secrets. We can't, we don't, we're comfortable about talking about Dave and Sandra. So
Mhm.
we're, each year goes by, it gets a little bit easier. I mean, it's still a raw wound,
Of
really,
course.
but we can talk about it, and we can talk about it to the kids. So,
Mhm.
and we can have that normal conversation, and that's what I'm trying to bring to the world,
I think that's
is for
exactly what
people
you're,
to
yeah.
have that conversation.
I think that's exactly what you're doing. And I thank you for sharing that. It's actually very, I'm going to say beautiful how it came together for the two of you, because I think that you both can, you've experienced a level of pain and experience a story that you both understand. There is no explaining it to
Yeah,
the other person. You both get it. You both lived it.
yeah.
Yeah. I think this
And I
is,
just,
it's a great
yeah, so,
topic, important.
and I just lost another, my next best mate, that we've known each other for an awful long time as well. And we've been through a lot of stuff together.
Mhm.
And it's his funeral tomorrow. And I mean, the funny part about that is we've had the conversation about what his funeral's going to be, and it's going to be a celebration of his life.
Mhm.
He's going to be dressed up in a minion suit.
Oh, are you serious?
Serious, yeah. Um, and nobody's allowed to turn up in dark clothes. All the ladies are going to be wearing bright clothes. And for the military types, we were obviously wearing our blazers and medals
Mhm.
to celebrate his life. And I'm giving a eulogy, and it's
Oh,
going to be very serious about his life. He was a larger than life character, and how I'm going to keep a straight face telling that, I don't know. If people are not fooling around in the aisles, then I've got it wrong.
yeah. I could see. No, you can see the. No, you can see the.
Whether I can keep it together or not on the day is something else, but
It's
that's
okay not
kind
to
of what's
keep it.
happening.
It's okay not to keep it together, but it's
Oh
honoring
no,
them, right? It's honoring
yeah,
them and who they are. I often share the story that my grandmother, when she passed, and I was with her in the hospital, all her family was gone. So when she was first diagnosed, everything went really fast. She was in, never left the hospital, and
mm,
we were very close. And I think she was about 3 days before she passed, that to the point where she wouldn't even let us see her anymore. And she called on the phone, and she said, everyone here says that I've got to have like Uncle Johnny doing the eulogy, and it's my funeral, and that's not going to happen. Marsha, will you do the eulogy? Literally her words. And I just sat there and I'm like, okay, I can do that. She goes, okay, here are the rules. You need to bring some humor to it. You've got to have some fun with it. I want you to celebrate who I was. And I
mm,
just honestly, like, that actually freaked a few people out when I told them. I thought it was fantastic that she knew what she wanted. She was
yeah,
crystal clear, and I that was the first eulogy I've ever done. And I just tried to bring so much of her personality to the like to her funeral. And I still think about that talk so many times because it hits home. But this is the piece you're talking about, is really when it comes down to, like, can we celebrate who they are, how they
yeah,
lived, and what they did? And she was crystal clear. That's exactly what she wanted.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's the best that we can do for somebody. Not mourn their loss, but celebrate their life.
Mm-hmm.
And if people can just take that board and be comfortable. The main thing is being comfortable talking about it
Mm-hmm.
and finding the joy that they brought to the world, and
Mm-hmm.
not mourn the loss, because they go on to somewhere else, and I'm sure they look down on us and thinking, you dozy buggers.
I'm sure, actually. I'm sure. I'm going to actually twist and turn that a little bit, segue, in the sense that it's also a reminder. This is a reminder that keeps coming back to me on a regular basis, is, am I living the life that I am meant to live? Like, am I here doing what I am meant to do? Am I playing small? Am I stopping myself? I can't remember the quote right now, but like, I don't want to come to the end of my life. Like, I want to slide in and say, I used every single thing, every single gift I had. Like, I did not play small. And so that's the reminder that it makes me think of, is, I mean, and no matter what, we still take things for granted. We're human beings. But can I take things for granted a little bit less? Can I actually appreciate them more every day? Because knowing that these are experiences that we're all going through.
Mm, absolutely.
Yeah. So,
I'm going to turn up at the pearly gates. I'm going to be sort of hobbling up to the pearly gates saying, "Here, Pete, can I have another body? I've worn this one out." By the way, I ain't got no regrets.
I love that. I love that. So when it comes to your show, you also, when you interview guests, you do things in a very different way. And And I loved it. It was a great experience. Like I actually did dive into myself and who I was and what I have come through. So I would love it if you would tell everyone the name of your show and how you interview guests, what you take them through.
Okay. It used to be called the Tim Heale Podcast. That didn't really work. It wasn't getting many sort of clicks and likes and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I retitled it Ordinary People's Extraordinary Stories.
Mm-hmm.
And that's got a little bit more traction.
Yeah.
And I find my guests via Podmatch at the moment, and I'm finding that it's fairly inexhaustible.
The same. I love Podmatch, but wow, I am inundated
Yeah,
right now.
it's a struggle sometimes, but
Mhm.
anyway, there's everybody has a story, and I have a basic format for the show where I ask my guests if they can tell us where and when they were born. I ask them if they can describe what it was like where they grew up, and that's the important bit, to get as descriptive as possible. And then we'll look at their school life, where they went to school, the types of school they went to, the education that they received.
Mhm.
And we'll kick that around for quite a bit. And I'll draw out some stuff that they've forgotten about, and find out what their favourite subjects were, which were their worst subjects, and how they kind of got on at school. And then we'll move on to their work life. And we'll do the same with that. We'll knock that around for a bit, and we'll pull out some little nuggets of information on that. And then we'll start focusing on something that they are passionate about, or something that they want to talk about. And that's kind of how the Ordinary People's Extraordinary Stories goes. And I'm up in the getting close to, I don't know, a lot.
I hear you. I do. I hear you. Yeah, I love it. I love what you do on the show. And again, just because it's so different. So anybody who's listening, like you can take your idea in podcasting and do it however you want. I think that's the beautiful thing. And lead with something that speaks to you, that's important to you, because it's a lot easier to stay consistent when it's something that means something to you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the way that I look at it is that I've got two of these,
Mm-hmm.
one of these, and that's kind of how I use them. And I let people open up. I let them tell their story, and I just give them a little prod along the way. If they, the one thing that I find is that people go from kindergarten to leaving college, and they miss so much out in the middle. So I have to just reel them back in, and we'll take them back, just force it out of them sometimes.
That might have been me, to be honest. It might have been me too, because I just know, like, it's like, oh, wait, I don't know. Let me think for a second. Just trying to think back to some of those things. And it's been funny since then, because I found an old like storage box that had like all old memorabilia. And I'm like, oh yeah. And just seeing those things and remembering them. So I love it. When you decided to start the podcast, I realized that you were sharing in the beginning, like pieces of your story, and then you decided to do more with it. Is it a surprise to you how much it's grown and what you've done with it? Or do you look back and go, yep, this makes sense. This is exactly, I'm not surprised I'm doing this.
I'm finding that I am getting better at being a host.
Mm-hmm.
I am really, really enjoying speaking to people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the way that I do it is that I give them 100% of my attention,
Mm-hmm.
and I try and make them feel comfortable, and I try and encourage them to open up and tell as much of their story as possible, because what it eventually is going to do is going to leave a legacy for their life, for
Mm-hmm.
future generations to use as a resource to look back at this time in history
Mm-hmm.
and know what people did in this time,
Mm-hmm.
where we can't do it. Yes, I suppose there are documentaries, the biographies of famous people,
Mm-hmm.
but ordinary folk like us, there's very little of how ordinary people live their lives. And this is a wonderful time to be alive. I mean, there's so much technology. It's just given us so many opportunities to be able to explore what we're doing and have that connection with people around the world.
Mhm. It is, isn't it? It's just, it's such a beautiful thing. Like I look at some of the conversations I've had and I'm like, it's like you said, people from all over the world. I think if you're listening and you think, God, I wish I could start a podcast, but oh, I'm too late to the game, or I'm not good enough. I'm not, whatever story you're telling yourself, it's just a story.
Yeah. Well, look at me. I I was born on the 5th of April, 1758.
Look at
That makes me
you.
264. Now, if I can do it at 264, you young people in your early 30s and late 40s shouldn't have any problems whatsoever.
No, not at all. You look amazing.
I know I try and keep myself in fairly fit trim.
Oh my gosh, it's hilarious. This is hilarious. So one of the things that you do with your podcast is you run panels so it's not just like one-to-one interview.
Oh, no. This is something different.
Oh, it's
This is
different.
on top of my podcast, and I'd urge anybody to click into any one of the episodes, and you'll be hooked.
Mhm.
Also, if you've got, I mean, there's nothing on the telly on a Thursday evening anyway.
Mhm.
So I started off this Thursday live stream,
Okay.
and this Thursday live stream is evolving. It's fairly new. I've only been doing it a few months.
Mhm.
But it's evolving, and this is where I'm trying to get my message out to talk about taboo subjects, and make it a normal conversation. So this is where I'm getting guests in, and we'll sit down, we'll have a panel, and we'll get occasionally stuff in the chat box and questions come in, and we have some fun on a Thursday for 2 hours. I mean, there's nothing on the telly, so you might as well tune in
Absolutely.
and fall about laughing at us sort of talking about really challenging subjects and making fun of it.
Yeah, we definitely we conquered some difficult subjects when I was on that panel with you. So, I mean,
Yeah.
this is the thing I want to share, is that you're putting out so much incredible content everywhere. So if you are a person who's like, okay, well, how do I shift my mindset? How do I tune in? What do I do? There's content everywhere. Just as much as when you turn on social media and you find crap content, there's really good content everywhere. You just have to choose to look at
Absolutely.
that. Mm-hmm.
And that's where I'm getting better. I'm improving the way that I'm delivering it, but promoting it in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting better with my thumbnails. I'm getting better with my description. So it's gaining traction, and I advise anybody out there, if you've got nothing better to do on a Thursday evening, well, it goes from 7 until 9 on a British summertime. So if you're across in America, it's I don't know,
We were 2 o'clock, 2 till 4, I think.
yeah, two to 4 on the eastern seaboard, and maybe a bit earlier on the western. So,
Mhm.
but it's fun, and you can always join in the conversation by putting something in the comments box and ask us a question and put us on the spot. And then we'll do our best to answer the question. And if we can't answer the question, we'll go away and find out the question and come back to you. And if we don't do that, we'll just make something up.
We'll just make it up. It's all good. We'll make it up. That's what we do. Yeah, you could tell that, I mean, our week that I was on was a little bit of a heavier topic, an important topic. And when there were people putting questions in the chat box, it shows that you're creating an environment that's open to have these discussions because people were asking difficult questions. And I think that's I think that's important, because you're opening up the door for people to have these conversations. I love it. I think it's fantastic what you're doing. And I just want it to really land for anybody who's listening to think, wow, I'm too late to start, and all these things that you're telling yourself. I mean, use your gifts, keep using them and practice, and let yourself be messy when it starts, right? I often
Yeah.
share that I've had multiple people say, I listened to some of your early podcasts. You've really improved. And I would hope so. We're well into 450 episodes. And the just being a smart ass. But one of the comments was like, why would you leave that out there? And I'm like, I will never take down my old work because I think that it shows you can start and it can be messy. And that's how you allow yourself to practice, because even who I am today is going to be different in 6 months from now. We evolve.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Can I tell people what some of the subjects that we're looking at doing?
Of course.
We're looking at,
Please
that
share.
we're looking at covering. I mean, we've looked at death, we've looked at suicide, we're going to look at prostate and testicular cancer.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to look at the effects of the female menopause on men. Now, that's something that's not discussed very often. There's lots of conversations about the women and the menopause and the debilitating condition that can be. But very, very people look at it from the bloke's point of view and what a bloke goes through. And I've had first-hand experience of it, I can tell you. And I mean, one minute she's as nice as pie, the next minute she's ripping your arm off and beating you with a soggy end. and then she's complaining she's freezing cold. And then you get into bed, she's like a radiator. You see, radiator on full. and you're always stepping around as though you're on a knife edge and on eggshells. So that's the sort of conversation that we're going to have. We're also going to look at depression. We're going to look at anxiety. We're going to look at some of the really challenging subjects. We're going to look into transgender. We're going to look at LGBTQ, XYZ, WD40. That's the sort of thing that we're going to try and bring out into the open. We're going to have normal conversations about it and encourage everybody else to do exactly the same.
Oh my gosh, I'm so proud of you. I love that you're doing this. Like, again, you're showing that we can there's so many things that we can do and so many ways that we can evolve and grow. And I absolutely love it. And I know it's going to continue to reach so many people. So in this show, right, Own Your Choices, Own Your Life, you've shared a lot of parts of your story, so many parts. And can you think of one time that hits you right now where it was like, yeah, I definitely made a different choice and that changed so many things in my life?
Yeah. When I came back from Afghanistan in 2009, that was my 7th operational tour in that 10 years. Don't get me wrong, I loved that time in Afghanistan. I spent 6 months there and I got to meet an awful lot of Afghans, and I really, really, really enjoyed my time. Because I was on full-time reserve service, the group couldn't give me another post because they'd just taken on some regulars and filled up the PIDs, which is the positions. I had to look around. I had two choices. I could go back onto the reserve cadre, and I would have got a promotion, and I'd have been part of the reserve cadre training team. I was part of the training team anyway. I didn't really want to go back part-time. I got offered a post up at the interrogation unit, I branch, as an instructor. I did some work with them quite a lot over the years, but they offered me a post as an instructor. I didn't really fancy delivering the same courses week in, week out. I was offered another post as a counter-terrorist briefer to go around the country to different units, briefing them up on counter-terrorist measures that were in place and stuff like that. Didn't really fancy doing all that travelling. And then this post came up as a welfare officer for London Central Garrison. I thought, that sounds interesting. So I put in for it. I went down to London and I had an interview. And this was a brand new post. In fact, there was 3 posts. There was 3 brand new posts. Blank piece of paper. And I thought, this sounds like I could get my teeth into.
Mm-hmm.
So I got the job, arrived, and it was a blank piece of paper. I pretty much wrote my own job.
Wow. And what did you do I know you said was about 8 years you worked? Yeah.
8 years as a welfare officer in London Central Garrison.
Okay.
I started off with one of the companies of incremental companies of foot guards, and these are young lads that come straight out training, and they come to London to do the ceremonial piece. These are the guys that stood outside Buckingham Palace with Christopher Robin and Alice. So they perform the guards.
Mm-hmm.
And being young fellas coming out training, or the 17, 18, 19-year-olds straight out training, these guys come to the big city lights in London, and on Millionaires Weekend, that's when they've just been paid. They're out on the town, and London, trust me, is a very expensive place to go out and have a drink.
Oh, is
So
it?
they're, yeah, so come the Monday morning after Millionaires Weekend, they're all skint. They're all penniless, and there's a queue outside the office for hungry soldier chit for the month. So at the end of the month, they have to pay the chit off. What's left, they can go out on a Millionaires Weekend, and the cycle goes on. So they tend to have money problems. They tend to have girlfriend problems. Yeah. So they come with their own issues. We also then picked up the 5 regimental foot guards bands. They tend to be slightly older people. They tend to be a bit more, I wouldn't say delicate, but more arty.
Mm-hmm.
So they come with a different set of problems. So it's handled all these different issues that people have in their lives, and dealing with it. And say, obviously, we were having all sorts of problems. At that time, the Afghan campaign was still going on. So from 2009 to 2014, there was still the fighting phase in Afghanistan, and we were providing guards and guards of honour and stuff like that for funerals and one thing and another. So we were dealing with quite a lot because we had a couple of the battalions out there, the guards battalions out there, and they were coming back in coffins. So being the incremental companies, they were the ones that were picking up the funeral guards. So we were dealing with that quite a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But also, this job gave me a huge amount of time to be able to indulge myself in organising adventurous training for the lads. And of course, they had to have a responsible adult goes on with them. So I took guys skiing, I took guys sailing, we sorted out a rugby team. So all the stuff that I love doing,
Mm-hmm.
I was able to get paid to do
Mm-hmm.
because I
That's awesome.
organised it.
That's so
I mean,
awesome.
I organised a sailing trip to Croatia. So I took 66 people. We had 10 boats. We had
Mm-hmm.
3 44s and 7 36-foot yachts. And we had a week in Croatia, giving young day skippers the opportunity to gain some more experience and get some mile building in. And it gave lots of other people the opportunity to go away and do an adventurous training exercise for fun, to
Wow.
build that resilience and stuff like that. So that was a great trip. And then I took guys up to the Baltic, about 6 years on the trot. We went up there for a fortnight in the summer, took out 2 boats, and we sailed around Denmark and Sweden. And took sort of, how many guys did we go? We went up with 10 guys, so 2 boats of 5, and we had wonderful times. And then in the winter, I took a load of guys down to Austria in the early days, to a place called Rowis, to the British Telemark Championships, of which I'm an expert telemark skier. and we took part in a competition. So that was sport. And then in the latter years, we went to a place called Provenance in France to do the same competition. So I've got to do an awful lot of skiing.
You did. And
I
experience.
took every opportunity to take liberties.
Good for
And when
you.
it came to, yeah, I know. It's hard to believe that I'm a liberty taker.
Oh
But
my
one,
gosh.
but one of the jobs that I bagged and I I absolutely loved this job. Have you ever seen Trooping the Colour or the Queen's Birthday Parade?
Mhm.
Well, you know where all the minor royals sit, just above where the Queen and the entourage are out the front, and they're just in the windows up above. Well, that used to be General Wellington's office. I served with Wellington during the Peninsular Wars back in the early 1800s. Anyway, my old boss, that was his office. And the job that I bagged was looking after the minor royals for the Queen's Birthday Parade. so I'm
Seriously?
just seriously, I've got all the minor royals out there. I've got Kate, Camilla, young Harry at the time, and William. No, William was outside, but yeah, the Gloucesters, the Yorks, the Kents were all upstairs. And I used to mingle with them on the
Oh
Queen's
my.
Birthday Parade.
Okay, that was interesting. I'm glad that made it into the show. I'm so glad that made it into the show.
Yeah, that was a nice little earner. That one, lovely. It was fun, and I don't know if you ever noticed, but when the afterwards and they go down to Buckingham Palace and you see them all come out on the balcony.
Mhm.
I don't know if you noticed this year, young George, when the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, there was only a few of them up on the balcony.
I
Well,
know.
if you manage to look back at that, look at young George.
Mhm.
He was bouncing, and there's a good reason for why he was bouncing. Don't tell anybody, but I have a suspicion that I know who did it, what they did. The bloke the
I'm.
general's office, because that was his first time up there.
Mhm.
They give the kids all these sugars, all these sweets.
Oh, to go up there. Oh, I'm
So
those.
time he's got down to Buck House, he's bouncing.
We laughed. So, I mean, that was a meme that went on for weeks. Like if you didn't see it, I mean, you just Google it because it was a meme that went on for weeks. And it was so funny because people would share comments about, can you believe he's acting like this and blah, blah, blah. And my husband and I looked at it and went, yeah, we raised one of those. Like we had one like that who would be
Yeah.
he did the opposite of what you wanted. He was a clown most of the time. It's just who he was. It was pretty funny. Those memes, those videos were pretty funny.
That is a sugar rush.
Mm.
That's what's happened.
Mhm.
The kids are all given these sweets, and they particularly the blue Smarty ones, which are, which are the ones that are really getting bouncing.
Well, I think we all felt for a second, we felt like more human, that they were more human because,
Yeah,
when you're always watching kids that sit and don't move and don't say anything, you're like, how? Now you just got to see that
yeah,
no, they're normal kids too.
absolutely.
Hmm.
And I didn't meet young George because he was too young. But when I was there, I did meet the eldest one, Louis.
Really?
So yeah, he was there. He got the same treatment.
Wow. Thank you for sharing so much. I mean, I'm proud and
Yeah,
I'm
don't tell anybody that.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll make sure we won't tell anybody that.
Yeah,
I'm laughing because I'm like, at least now you have another podcast where you are going to be able to, hold on to some of your precious memories and things that you went through. And you gave so much permission to other people to just go after what you want. Like, go after
yeah,
what you want. Time is too short.
absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, where can people follow you, connect with you, and find your show?
Well, they can get us on all the major podcast platforms.
Mhm.
So the Spotify's, the Apples, the whatever,
Mhm.
Googles and all that, and just look for ordinary people's extraordinary stories, and
Mhm.
that will come up.
Mhm.
And if you go onto YouTube and you put in Thirsty Thursday live stream, you'll come up with the show. And if you want to, you can subscribe to it. I mean, if you click the bell icon, you'll get notified when we go live.
Mhm.
If you do come onto the show, feel free to put comments into the chat box and ask us questions. And of course, don't forget to click that like button, because that helps the channel grow, apparently.
It does.
And
That's what they say.
if the channel grows, you'll get to grow with it.
There's a YouTube ad right there.
Yeah, coming right at you.
Sorry, that was so good. That was so good. Oh, I have loved this conversation. This is our third one in a month, and I've absolutely loved this connection. I would love it if I have one more question for you. What lesson in life are you most grateful for?
You coming on my podcast.
Oh,
What? Meeting you on my podcast.
oh, okay.
You're such a gorgeous person.
Oh,
And and it is an open invitation to come on the Thursday anytime you like.
I'm happy to support you. Honestly, I'm happy to. I really, okay, I'm going to receive that. Thank you. Because I always tell my clients you need to receive when you get compliments. So thank you. And I will always support the work that you're doing, because I mean, as soon as I saw the title of your show, I'm like, okay, wait, extraordinary, ordinary people, extraordinary stories. I'm all about stories. We all have incredible stories to share. And the more we can share, even the difficult topics, the more we can normalize it. And if we can normalize it, then we all start feeling like less that we're not alone, because we're not alone. And so I love the work that you're doing, and I will continue to shout it from the rooftops and support it, because it's so needed, honestly. Thank you for an incredible conversation. Oh, you have something?
One more thing. If anybody wants to follow me on Facebook,
Facebook.
did I call it Faceache?
You did.
I'm always calling it that. Get serious. Just put in there Tim Heale 9, and you should find us on there. I think I'm on Instagram as at Tim Heale 9, and it's a number 9. I'm a scrum half. Haven't talked about rugby much, have I?
No.
That's a whole different story.
I'll make sure that all of your connections are there so people can follow and tune in. And I just thank you for everything that you shared today, and for bringing a sense of humor to, not easy topics, but I mean, I love the work that you're doing, and I'm grateful for our connection.
No, thank you so much.